Welcome back to another episode of Holy Unapologetic. Very happy to be here after a little bit of a hiatus. How you doing, Ace?
So good. I'm a little tired. I've ran 4 events in the last 2 weeks, but other than that,
Ooh,
life is good. How are you?
yeah. I'm doing pretty well. You just kind of keeping busy.
Yeah.
But I got some big writing projects done recently, which feels good. But yeah, so happy to be back to chat with you. You had a great topic for today's episode. So do you want to introduce us to what you want to chat
Yeah.
about?
So we're going to talk about religious deconstruction. And what I realized is the biggest growth category right now in religion is not another denomination, but it's actually people leaving institutionalized religion altogether. They're like saying, fuck no, I no longer want to be a part of the church or any religion. I'm just going to do my own thing. And so, actually, I wanted to have a conversation with you because both of us have a long standing history in the church. We grew
Hmm.
up in religion and we deconstructed it and we're on the other side of it. And I thought, hey, this might be a really good time. There's a lot of people that are processing what does it look like to actually leave something that I've held so close to myself and my heart and my life. And so, yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun conversation around what does it look like to be in religion and then to lose it or to leave it and reestablish ourselves in the world today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good topic and a good one to revisit too. I was kind of, as I was thinking about this, kind of going through my own timeline of how it kind of slowly unraveled. But it was also good to realize that I think there are going to be some key kind of divergent points for us too. We have so much in common, which is why we've connected and spent so much time, enjoying these conversations together and with other guests. But I do think there are some kind of key points at which our stories will diverge a little bit. So I think that'll be interesting. So the
Yeah.
first pillar that you wanted to start with was really just who are we?
Yeah, I think our listeners who already know us kind of know the basics of it, but we might have some new listeners today. And so I just wanted to briefly share just a little bit about my journey and yours so that they can have a context as to like why are we qualified to talk about this? And are we really qualified to talk about this, you know?
Hmm. Great season 2 reboot.
There we go. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So, as you well know, Mark, I grew up in the Christian church. I spent 38 years of my life there. The first 18 years, obviously, I was a kid, and it feels like I was kind of indoctrinated into it. I knew nothing else. And so it was a part of my life. I went to church multiple times a week. I went, and sat with the pastor. As I was growing up, we had catechism classes where we talked about theology and all of the foundational elements of Christianity. And then I ended up going to college, getting a degree in theology, becoming a mega youth pastor. And then I worked as an executive leader within an international Christian organization that was like $100 million, right? So, like, I was all in. I was totally devoted and I was abandoning myself. And so that's kind of where my deconstruction started to happen was when I realized, like, there's an incongruence here. It doesn't align with my lived experience. Maybe I need to start critically thinking about religion, its impact on my life, and what I actually want to do in this world in my life. So that's just a basic framework for who I am and why I feel like I might be somewhat qualified to talk about this.
Yeah, great summary. For me, I grew up on the East Coast with a big family. I was a pastor's kid, Lutheran pastor, 3 older brothers. Always kind of felt like I was one of the brothers and was very much treated like one, but uh, not at the same time. So I think for my story, it's a lot more melded in with my kind of family dynamics too. And so deconstructing religion was a huge part of my story, but also almost seemed secondary now in retrospect to deconstructing my family system and a very toxic um, family system at that. So grew up as a young girl in this system, very much dedicated to the religious side of my life, as we're taught, that's kind of your everything. But I think what was most helpful is that I went to school in Vermont, very liberal, small town. I got to be there with some new friends and also old friends that had known me for a long time, which I'm so grateful for. So a lot of that deconstruction started just with having debates about things and starting to poke holes in things and question things. And then from there, eventually moved out to California, another blue area, although we've got plenty of red areas here as well. And so I had this separation physically from my religious upbringing and also from my family. And that's when I was able to start actually looking at my own gender identity. I think I basically deconstructed by the end of college, where I was like, this isn't adding up. And as someone who's like a voracious learner, I was like, this is so much more fun to learn about the world through an anthropological lens than our magical team won and is going to keep winning lens. And so that's just, I felt like I was just replacing it with something so much better versus I had already kind of not been going to church regularly, already kind of separate from, like I said, the systems I grew up with. And a lot of my long term friends from childhood weren't either were married to the church and also separating like I was, or weren't married to the church. So I didn't feel as big a loss in that same sense of like, oh, all my church friends, which I'm grateful for. I had this separation, which then, I'm kind of jumping to a later question, but it's like, what do you get on the other side? And it's like everything in terms of finding my own identity that's always been there that I had been ignoring, that you kind of learn to bury down and remove your uniqueness. And of course, all this can tie into fascism too, of like, let's have them all the same and for this one purpose versus if you could really be yourself, we're all beautifully unique. So, yeah, I think for me, and then I basically had a big, more dramatic separation from my family more recently in 2025, which was incredibly heartbreaking. And so now I've been more deconstructing how messed up our family system was and how they need a scapegoat and how they have different ways that they make excuses for abusive memories and things like that. So I think for my story, there was this kind of gradual unraveling with religion growing up. But I also, unlike you, I went to school for programming and then I went to jobs in programming and I went to jobs and now I work somewhere completely unrelated. And so I had a little bit more separation of church and state. So I've had different kind of upheavals at different stages. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for my deconstruction was really just great conversations with friends and then also just learning more things and being open to learn more things and not feeling like I had all the answers. So yeah, now I consider myself a writer, but I have a full-time other job here out in California, and I'm at a point where I'm just trying to figure out who I even am because for the longest time it's who you're told to be. And then I think the last 10 years was more me fighting against that and being like, I'm not one of those bad Christians, or I'm not one of those people that enforce gender roles, or I'm not all of these things that I grew up with. So now I'm kind of in a place where I'm like, I don't really know who I am, but I'm going to try to figure it out and be compassionate to myself and go from there. So that would be my summary of who I am at the moment.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because for me, there was a point, there was a moment in life where I was like, fuck this. I can no longer be a part of the Christian church or the religion, right? And for you, it was more of like a drawn out space of figuring
Hmm.
out who you are and realizing, oh, there's incongruence here. It doesn't feel good. And it was more of like an ebb and flow over years of like, yeah, this
Yeah.
isn't right for me.
Yeah, kind of like detaching of things bit by bit, kind of coming out of like a net almost and getting to the shore versus yours, which was it's so much more of your life was tied up in this whole system, which is what makes your story so exciting, but also what's made that all the more insane to feel like, okay, the foundation of this whole thing is crumbling.
Yeah. Well, I remember sitting on my therapist's couch and just being like, what the fuck? How did I get here? Like, my life was going in, I thought, the right direction. I was on the right path, right? And I
Hmm.
had everything. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, if that no longer exists, what is life? And I remember being like, what is
Yeah.
my purpose? Like, I had this purpose to evangelize and to get people to come to Jesus and to, live the lifestyle and give their life full, be all in. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like, well, I don't believe that to be true anymore. What am I going to do? Who am I going to be? What's my purpose here in this world? And so it was a really difficult, like, 3 month period for me because it was like everything just evaporated in an instant.
Yeah, it's the whole kind of deconstruction of this whole framework. I always kind of think of it as like your rubric for life, like the way that you decide if you're a good person or a bad person or on track or not on track. And
Yep.
I think we both, what's funny, when we do have in common is that we both like made a lot of money in a different position. And, but we also felt like there's something wrong, like deeply in our bodies too. And I feel like I was kind of checking all the right boxes, went to school, got a good high paying job, but I was also like completely miserable and like turned off on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And there were like these little, I always kind of think of it like the pilot light was still on for this other version of myself, but it was just completely neglected. And I think that's a lot of what we've seen other people in the church do is the way that you die to yourself, right? Like you don't matter, only your position in the church and how you proselytize matters. And it takes a long time to unlearn that. So now I'm trying to like reach back to my like inner child to be like, what do you want? What are things that interest you? Because then once I figure it out, it's like, oh, that's what I should always have been doing this whole time. And I'm like, awaking this version, but like I keep going to like as I kind of thaw myself out, I have all these painful memories crop up, but each one that comes up has to do with a really important realization of like, ooh, that's when I learned. this thing that I had to do to survive. And this is when
Mhm.
I killed that part of myself. And it's heartbreaking because they're like memories from when I was like 5, 6, 7, 8. But I'm doing that work now that's very uncomfortable to now live a freer, more open life. And the kind of work that, queer people talk about, like, oh yeah, we're terrorized in the world, but it's still worth it. Like it's still worth it to be myself and to be alive and to want to be alive is a big thing too.
Mhm.
Um, so it's all tied to so many different things. So this one topic of deconstruction fits into so many other. It's all very intersectional too. So it's,
Absolutely.
it's like where do you even jump in, basically?
Yeah. Well, and you brought up a great point because I think when I deconstructed, I had lived my entire life in my head, right? I was
Hmm.
like one of the smarter people in the room. I always had the right answers. Like I knew where my life was going. And the moment I deconstructed, I was like, oh shit. Is there something more than intellectual life? Like, is there a
Yeah.
somatic part? Can I be in my body? Can I be embodied? Can I be feeling? I had numbed out just like you had for so
Yeah.
long. And now it's like, okay, how can I feel these feelings? And how do I dive into my identity and sexuality and all the things, right? So it was no longer just this intellectual path that I was pursuing to be right in this world, but it was
Hmm.
more of an embodied experience where it's like I can drop into my body and really be present with the people that I'm interacting with. So I'm no longer looking towards the future in heaven, right? I'm
Right. Oh
here,
my
I'm
gosh.
now with people. And that was a
Yeah.
drastic shift.
Yeah, I wrote down a quote because I know it was a big part of my deconstruction, which is that I learned that someone that worked, I think from looking it up, it was someone underrated, and that was basically like, oh, we don't have to worry about the environment because the second coming is going to happen. And I just remember being in college, being like, that doesn't really seem like what the good guys would say, and doesn't really seem like a good way to like exist in the world. And then a big part of it too of just like Christians feeling like they have all the answers all the time. So similarly, to feel like I'm always living in the future, always planning the next thousand things. And this is another like hypervigilance thing. And it's like, being the perfect pastor's family, like you learn to read everybody in the room. And something I hate about how I was raised is that it was always that my own, like my discomfort didn't matter. Every adult's comfort mattered from as young as I can remember.
Mhm.
And you have to be ready to jump up and perform at all times to do the song and dance. And so I've had to really separate, like, even just with social media, like, is this just my version of performing now to
Mhm.
prove that we're all perfect and we're all good all the time? Or is this a fun way for me to share myself and connect with friends? Like I have to kind of reanalyze it, but very much struggle with being present in the moment, in my body. And like with many, I've struggled with substance abuse. And for me, it's like with alcohol, it was running away for a long time. And then also, more recently, it's like it makes me feel it's like the only thing where I'm in the moment. So I have to
Mm.
work on learning that without a substance, of course, because I don't want to be dependent on anything. But it was like I'm never just like I'm sitting on the couch. I feel like putting on the movie. I'm always like thinking about everything that happened that day, thinking about everything I'm going to do tomorrow. And then, but I did have a good breakthrough on this recently that I wanted to share. I was watching a video about like brain science and how the left side, right side of our brain, and it was basically saying how like one side of your brain will make up the stories to explain everything going on in the other side of your brain. And so this idea of like telling stories, and they had some really cool tests about it, but where this guy was basically like they could show something to his left and right brain, and then he would come up with a logical answer as to why he referenced the thing they had only shown in one side of his brain. So anyway, but what I got thinking about with that was like, what is the story I'm telling about myself right now? It's like, oh, it's a day off, so I should be cleaning the whole apartment. I should be prepping for this. I should have been going to the gym the last 6 months, whatever it is. I'm just telling a million stories and judgmental stories and should stories. And so it was like, what if I didn't tell that story? And I was like, I'm sitting on the couch. I've got a snack. I'm watching YouTube videos about cool science things. Like, this is the best. Like, my life is wonderful, but I haven't felt like I've been in it for most of it. And so, and that's a big survival thing too. And so that's a big thing I'm trying to learn is exactly what you said. And so I find you and the work that you and your friends do and your experts do, I don't mean friends in a like cutesy way, but the amazing people in your life do is helping people reconnect to their bodies. Like what a holy thing. What an incredible thing. And I still really struggle with it. And then, you can tie this into purity culture and how we're not supposed to feel pleasure. We're not supposed to have desires. We're not supposed to be like our bodies are basically just to do something else. And it's a lot to unlearn. And it's a lot to unlearn physically too, not just in your brain. Cause I tend to like intellectualize it and be like, I think this thing that happened when I was 5 affected this thing. And that's not the same as feeling it too. So I've got a lot of work to do, but I'm trying to be patient with myself and be grateful that I'm not where I was 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild how I think a lot of times we don't realize that we're the adult in the room. Like, we
Hmm.
have voice, we have choice, we can do what we want when we want to. If someone tells us to do something, we can choose not to do it. Like, that's a huge part of my journey. Is like, I remember at the very beginning of my journey of deconstruction was someone asked me, "What do you want?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm not
Mm.
allowed to want. Like, I have no idea what it even looks like to get what I want, because
Yeah.
I've been programmed, like you said earlier in the episode, to do whatever the adults want in the room. It's
Hmm.
okay. This is the direction you should take in your life. This is what you should be doing. This is the right path. So just go ahead and do that." And it was like I was basically following marching orders in my life of like, okay, this is the next right thing. It
Yeah.
wasn't the next right thing for me, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it can take such little things too. And I love your stories of like, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to have a piece of chocolate. I'm going to do, pleasure first, which is so beautiful. But I still feel like a lot of my life is still run based on this idea of like when I had the good, high paying job, it was like, okay, this means that when my mom is at church, she can say one sentence about me that's a good thing. And it can just be the soundbite. The kids are doing well, checking that box. Like it didn't matter how miserable I was, how many hours I worked, how much of myself I was neglecting, as long as I was fitting the perfect church family narrative, which is where I kind of have a lot more of my story inextricably tied to the family dynamic. And so I haven't spoken to my family in over a year now. I basically just passed the 1 year anniversary for my mom's awful Mother's Day message. And I still feel like there's part of me that's like, playing it small for the
Mm,
dynamics and for all of those things and what they might think, which in my brain I don't care about anymore and screw them, that kind of thing. But like in my body and your entire life being like, no matter what, as long as they're happy, is just another thing that's can be kind of difficult to unlearn. So what do I actually want? Because I think what the beautiful thing is like so many problems and conflicts happen because of people's insecurities
mhm.
and it's something I've loved about my relationship with my fiance is that like we can kind of pretty quickly figure out like that triggered me for this reason. And please, if you could just know that this phrasing or this whatever action can affect me differently for this reason. And it usually comes back to like childhood or something, that's and so we could come back to, of course, loving each other and of course wanting to resolve things, but also knowing that we're just also kind of little kids on the inside that are trying to sort of get our needs met in one way or the other. And so learning how to talk through uncomfortable things like that versus having a kind of posture like you're always, I'm fine. I don't have any feelings. I don't, I'm tough, but I'm cool or whatever um, to actually to look at what do we actually need? Because a lot of times, like, what's the acronym where they say like you're probably hungry, you're probably tired, you're probably one of those things. It could just come down to that. And then I think there's this beautiful thing where like especially queer people just like are better at taking care of ourselves and better taking care of each other versus how fake everyone else is just kind of raised to be all the time. Once you realize how many layers you've peeled off, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, the programming is rather intense for sure.
Hmm.
And I love how you said you're just able to meet your fiance in the moment and in the space.
Hmm.
Like, there's a lot of relationships where there's going to be rupture, right?
Hmm.
And we're going to say something that doesn't land well, or we're going to do something that hurts someone's feelings. And it's like, I still have your best interest at hand. So let's have a
Yeah.
conversation about this.
Yeah.
And I think my family dynamics is let's just put it under the rugs and pretend that it never
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah.
which just keeps the pile growing bigger and bigger versus actually
Mhm.
dealing with whatever is going on in the moment.
Yeah, and I think we see that a lot. I follow a lot of great content creators about people that have gone no contact with their family and just all these psychological elements involved. But yeah, it's like the a lot of times the parents just don't want to have to dig out what's all under there because they were taught to just put more things under the rug. So it's like, well, you're my kid. You should not be making me feel uncomfortable in these ways. Like we're supposed to talk all the time. I should have access to you all the time. And they don't want to have to do the emotional work involved to actually have. And that's why I feel like I can meet queer people and have a closer connection to them and 2 hours than with like a lot of people like in my family, that I've known for so long. Like they don't actually want to know you on a deep, in my experience, on a deeper level and know how you're actually doing. They want the pleasant and the fake and the good facade up for everyone else. And it's kind of heartbreaking because then what? You just kind of suffer in silence, or you just dull, 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 so you don't feel it. Or I think in a classic example, you keep busy all the time. You don't have to face your feelings, and that can be the way that people live their entire lives. And you can kind of understand, especially in our hustle culture. And I'll always come back to your therapist, Protestant productivity. That really stuck with me. And it's like, ooh, yeah, we were raised with that. There are ways that we can just, and nowadays, what I have to work on is not, work all day, listen to podcasts in any quiet moment, watch a movie, and then, take some sleeping pills and go to bed or whatever. Like, I don't give my brain a time when it's not being filled with something or actively doing something, but that's when all those uncomfortable feelings come up. So I get why people avoid it.
I think part of it actually has to do with capacity.
Mm,
Like there are people in my old life that don't have the emotional range or the capacity to meet me in that space, right? And so it's just easier to put it under the rug and pretend it doesn't exist versus
yeah.
expanding that and being like, you know what, this is uncomfortable. And I'm
Mhm,
willing because I love you to go into this with you and like stay in the fire.
mhm.
It's really easy. What I've noticed for a lot of people is just to be like, well, I don't have capacity for that. And so I'm just going to go do my thing over here versus doing the
Yeah.
hard work of actually meeting someone in that space and allowing the expansion and the contraction to naturally happen because that's what's going to happen in human relating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it ties to the Christian idea, but also what we've seen on the Republican side too, of just like you always have a soundbite ready to go. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're faced with something new and uncomfortable, you can just be like, mental illness, boom, like don't have to think about it anymore. And then you just have all these things queued up, ready to go. And I can remember the ones that I used to say or have ready too. And it's like, man, if I had read like anything more about this topic, I would have known that that was a bad soundbite, and it's just not accurate. It's but I think too, it's just so important to face that discomfort. I think we know you're such a great dream chaser yourself. Like you get there on the other side of discomfort and pushing yourself past your limits, and hopefully we just get better and better at it. But a lot of people will avoid that with every, especially I think with people with privilege, middle class white people that don't have to worry about where their next meal is coming from. They haven't had to face a lot of discomfort. Of course, your life is hard, but I heard a great quote on that the other day. It was like, of course, your life is hard, but it's not hard because you're white, which I think is a good
Mm.
distinction because with privilege, you don't really see your privilege unless you're interfacing with people that are different from you. And I think they can stay in these tiny little conservative Christian bubbles and have their idea of what the world is like. And this is another thing we get growing up in Christianity is like us versus the world. They are not of us. We are not of this world. So talk about not wanting to take care of it. It's like these very, which are like the foundations of any cult, us versus them. But you can only kind of realize that privilege if you are interfacing with the actual world. But yeah, to avoid discomfort is definitely a pattern. And I got thinking about this the other day. I don't know if you've seen this clip. It's a David Goggins clip where someone's saying like, well, what if you wake up and you don't want to go out running because you got holes in your shoes and your knees are tired? And Goggins is like, good, good, good. Because that means I'm going to outrun all of these people. They're not going to be going. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do the run. And so I was like, okay, well, what if we take that and then we flip it over to the emotional work side of things instead of like running 1,000 miles? And you think about like, oh, they don't want to have a conversation with their friend that they disagree with. Good. I've already done that. And I've pushed through that discomfort and I'm a better person for it. Or like they don't want to have to face their painful childhood memories where they might have actually been really messed up by their own families. Good. Or not good for them. But I'm glad I've done that work. I've pushed through that discomfort and I'm better for it and I'm a better person for it. So I hope this for everybody. But I also know that that's a different version of like my Goggins is having to, and I think for the world's Goggins, we love these very masculine physical challenges, but how often do we revere the emotional challenges? And I think I was laughing at this with my fiance too. We were watching all these new trailers, and it was just like, here's some special white man who gets thrown into a crazy situation. He's going to punch his way out of it at the end of the movie. And I was like, great, great physical challenge. What if one of these movies was like, you're sitting down on the couch next to your bro and he says something racist? Are you going to call him out on it? Like that would be the biggest, scariest thing ever. Forget about the monsters in another dimension. Like we value these physical challenges and not the emotional work and the emotional discomfort that it takes to be a better person. When I was writing down my deconstruction list, it was like a conversation with this friend, a debate with this friend who really kind of called me out on certain things and made me think about it. Debate with this friend. Like there were people that I interfaced with that thankfully had kindness and patience for me and took care of me, but forced me to confront my little sound bites and
Mhm.
reach for more. And so I just think generally as a society, we should value so much more of our emotional work and the value of that versus like, I don't feel anything. I've won. Instead of just the physical stuff. But I'm also infinitely better and happier in my life because I've faced really uncomfortable things. Like we had to face them. You can't not face
Mhm.
them in our situations. Queer people have to face these things, and certainly people of color have to face so many different things that I feel like I only learn about through a book. That it's like, one thing that's uncomfortable is our actual nation's history. Like that's something like that I have to like actually go through and read a history book that we didn't get taught about. So I know I'm covering a lot of different things, but I just think that there's so much value in that emotional work. And I think there's a large cohort of our country that will do anything to avoid being uncomfortable. And that's kind of the difference is like, are you willing to learn and grow and change and be told you were wrong and realize you were wrong for 15, 20 years? Or are you going to avoid that discomfort and double down? And I think that's how you could probably divide a lot of people at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we see this like day in, day out politically, right? JD
Mhm.
Vance gets on the stage and he says something and it's controversial because it's the exact opposite thing that he said to someone else, right? He's like,
Yeah.
there's a hypocrisy in this. And the
Hmm.
reality is if they were on stage and they were coming from a place of embodied truth, and
Yeah.
they took the sacred pause after they were asked a hard question and they were
Hmm.
actually speaking truth, I think their answer would be drastically different than what's actually out there. It's
Yeah.
like right now Trump is totally going balls to the walls against trans people. Well, if you look at clips of him back in 2016 when he wasn't actually pressured about it, he was totally cool with transgender people using the bathroom. He had no problem with it. He's like, hey, let them go live their
Yeah.
life, let them do their thing. It's 10
Hmm.
years later. Politically, it makes perfect sense, right, for him to
Yeah.
say the things he's doing, and yet it's 1% of the population that they seem to be going after, and we're terrorists now, and it's like, wait, hold on, like where did this story come from? Because it's not actually factually true.
I think it comes down to two interesting things. One is the fact of they're going to pick a minority that not a lot of people know just to see how far they can push this. And then there's a whole poem of like, first they came for, right? So take this kind of vulnerable minority. But then there's another side of it that I like to think about too, which is that transness calls everything they live on into question. Talk about their foundation, their framework. If you can't bucket people based on their genitals for what their gender roles should be. I think of every woman that like gave away her life to a shitty marriage and maybe didn't even want to be a mother and is now just kind of like if you have to that's a very uncomfortable thing for them to have to face. I don't think a lot of people would want to face that. The idea, and of course, we have the male loneliness epidemic and the things that come from men being told their entire lives that they're important and they're the hero and they're going to do great things. And a lot of them largely based on our economic situation, but a lot of them aren't doing great things and they aren't accomplishing great things. And what happens there when that story starts to fall? And so all these different things start to fall apart when you're like, no, gender is kind of a construct and gender rules are made up. And of course, there are funny versions of it too, where you could be like, yeah, men used to wear this back in the day when they used to wear more makeup, or like it's all made up. You can do gender light in that way, but it really does like, especially I think with a chaotic world, there are the people that want to double down on no, there's biology, there's science, men are like this and women are like this, and I think the shittiest people kind of talk that way and talk about women or females even worse into the manosphere.
Well, and the funny part of that is like what they're saying is science is not actually science.
No,
It's just
not at
a
all.
thought that somebody created. It's not actual real biological science.
Hmm. I saw such a great takedown the other day, or it was just like, okay, so what about people with these particular chromosomes? Because they exhibit these characteristics, they have X, Y, but they are able to get pregnant in in some cases or whatever. They're like, so I think it's just another soundbite where there's someone who hasn't thought about genetics since like third grade wants to be able to say like X X X Y, end of conversation. And it's like, okay, well, it goes a lot further than that. And there's I just hate the arrogance of feeling like you have all the answers. But I also just love learning new things. And I think, uh, yeah. So I think that our presence shows that it's all made up and it is malleable. It breaks down a lot of the whole belief system. So we are a minority, but we also ruffle a lot of feathers.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's all just made up. Like all the
Yeah.
rules in society, who we think we are, who we think we need to be, all of it.
Yeah. And then we can learn this about other things too. Like, oh, it doesn't always have to be patriarchy. There are matriarchies, like all the things that are like destroying our world. We can realize they weren't always like this. Cause I think that's what can make you feel the most helpless is that this is the only way things could possibly go. And another thing I've heard too, and I don't know, I don't have a study for this, but I feel like sometimes um, people on the right can feel much more negative about like, oh, well, human nature is to do terrible things or whatever and to not help each other, not be collaborative. And it's like, actually, no. Like, I saw a good example of it the other day, not explicitly Republican, but there's the book, The Lord of the Flies, about a bunch of boys who survive on an island and they create this terrible kind of ecosystem, and they're all really violent with each other. And there was actually a story where that happened in real life in the 60s, and the boys survived a long time, and they worked really well together, and they paired off into groups, and they switched off who cooked and who did this and this and this. And it's like, so the real story is that humans are much more helpful and collaborative. And I think, queer people take care of each other in such a beautiful way, that it makes me sad that people outside of that are like, well, left to their own devices, people really are going to take advantage of each other. And another classic example is like the Stanford prison experiment. It's like, that's not a good like thing for describing everybody. That's like white college aged men in this particular group that did these different things. And so, yeah, it just makes me sad when people have such a negative view of humanity. And that's why I would, from very early on, call myself a humanist. But I remember going to like this Christian camp where they were like, "Oh, they're almost as bad as atheists." Like humanists, ooh, I should get the booklet out. I do really hope I can have my friend on sometime that went on that particular week trip with me, because it was a really really messed up Christian camp that we went to. But anyways, the idea that even humanism could be seen as a threat to Christianity is like red flag. But I believe a lot of good in people, and I guess it makes me sad when people think such ill of each other.
Yeah. It's interesting because there are some really ugly people in this world,
Oh yeah.
right? Like the things that they think about, the things that they do, the threat that they are to other people. Like it's true. There's like, I don't know what the word is for it, but there are ugly people out there. And also there are beautiful people out there who
Yeah.
want the best for you and want to support you and care for you and also like do great things in the community. And so
Mhm.
when I realized that probably about 6 months ago, I was like, man, I'm seeing all this ugliness in the world. I was like, I can focus on that, or I can choose to be like, okay, yes, this exists. And also, like, that's not me. That's not how I
Yeah.
want to live my life. That's not who I want to be. So, how
Mhm.
can I be something else in this world, in my interactions with other people? And there was a slight shift in like my mentality and how I viewed the world. I wake up now and it's not like, oh, the world is burning down, which it is.
Yeah.
But it's like, what can I do in the world today to actually help someone else,
Yeah.
or to actually like uplift my lifestyle and what I'm doing and who I am in this world? And yeah, like there's a lot of threat out there right now for trans individuals. Like I acknowledge that right now in this moment, I'm safe. Right
Mhm.
now in this moment, this is what I can do. This is what I have capacity to do. And so
Mhm.
I've been shifting my mentality over the last few months of like, I don't want to live my life in fear. I want to
Yeah.
live my life embodied and centered. And if I get taken out, I get taken out. And also, like, I enjoyed this one beautiful life that we have. And I've
Mhm.
experienced it. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Gosh, I just remember Christians talking about, and even my own family talking about, like, "Oh, I can't wait to die. I can't wait to die to go to heaven and be with Jesus." And it's like, oh my God. How is that the belief system? But yeah, to actually enjoy our lives. And I think there's so much pressure to just want to give up and be overwhelmed, and not to get like, oh, they want us all sad. But it does feel like they want us all distracted and stressed out so that we don't kind of unify and, and do something about it. But I think that's a beautiful reminder of like, who can I help in my own circle? How can I help take care of my own self, so I can be a better person out in the world? And I seriously love you and your integrity and how you show it in interactions. Like we're not some big multi-million dollar podcast right now, and I still feel like we hold ourselves to a really great standard and we communicate really well. And I think that's only going to then be able to say still be the case as things scale. And so I just really really respect that from you. But yeah, I think knowing that people have a lot of different capacity. I've been interested in articles about like what even makes a billionaire, because it doesn't seem like, is that someone that starts off with all these terrible characteristics that then they continue to exploit people? Or do they just continue to be surrounded by people that are yes men that then make them feel like gods, and then it can kind of continue? And it's a little bit of nature and nurture and all these different things. But generally speaking, I think most people are pretty innocuous. And then we have, of course, the fringe. But one thing I didn't like about the Christian framework is like, if someone's bad or if someone's done something really evil, you can just say they're a demon or that it's the devil. And then if someone's really good and that someone really bothered me, it's like, oh, it's an angel. And I might have told this story, but I just remember my mom telling a story of getting like totally saved by some cabbie that got them home in a difficult situation. And she was like, oh, it's definitely an angel, definitely an angel that did that. And I just remember being like, so how good does a human have to be before you stop believing they're human and you start believing they're an angel? Because that makes me sad. That means there's an upper cap to our ability to be really good humans that really helps you get home at a difficult time. Like I want to believe people can go all the way up here. And it's not like, oh, that's the magic God one. That's not an actual human. We're only in this little range. But it does let you just excuse like all this evil over here. That's why I almost don't even like using the word because of how they use the word evil. Like we don't have to do anything to help prevent this type of crime because those are demons or that's the devil and he's got control of that. It's like, okay, well, what if we just worked on like better healthcare, better like livable wages, housing, like all these different things that just like statistically prevent crime in all these different ways.
Yeah.
Um, Mental health resources, even at the more extreme cases, I think everyone should get a therapist, but even at more extreme cases that people can seek help. So it, in a lot of ways, what ties back to the Christian belief system and to tie it back around to the beginning, it's like, well, we're going to be going to heaven soon. So, there are these people that are, oh, what was the word? I just heard it recently, accelerationists or something like that. They're trying to bring on the end times, really destroy the world so that they can escape and go to heaven. And we saw this with people that thought the rapture was coming. And it's like, wow, so you guys really just are trying to destroy the world and then just think you can escape without having to have any of the consequences of it. And without having to face that, like maybe if you voted for healthcare, the world would be a better place. Like, I hate it. I hate it so much. It's such a hands off, like, well, I can't. Or it's like the people that are like, well, I'm not going to vote because it's all corrupt. It's like, whether or not that's true, that's such a cop out. And it's such a way so that you can make sure you're not doing anything. So granted, we don't all have a lot of power to change the world, but how do we help people around us? But it does feel like a lot of it's like this kind of thought terminating cliche that like stops people from having to think too hard about things that are uncomfortable. It bothers me. But I'm not some perfect activist. I'm not out marching on the streets all the time. I'm not donating all the time. I should volunteer so much more. So I'm not saying this like I'm this pinnacle person. But I am trying to at least learn as much as I can, and then hopefully I can and do things to help people too. And just if nothing else, try to stay alive myself at times like this. But at least I'm not kind of falling back into old patterns of like, oh well, it's probably some moral failing as opposed to large economic issues. Ugh,
Well, and realizing that there's only so much you can do, right? You're one
right.
person. Like, and what I realized a long time ago was the only thing I really can change is like my inner circle,
Yeah,
who's
I
in
like
it,
that.
what I'm doing for them. And beyond that, like, I don't have a lot of influence on a lot of other people in a greater degree.
Hmm.
So, what's my part? And that's all I'm held to is like, am I doing what's right in this moment for myself and others around me?
Hmm.
Beyond that, like I can't solve the war in Iran, even though I'd love to do so, right? I don't
Yeah.
have the power, I don't have the influence, I don't have the
Hmm.
capabilities. But what can I do right here in my little town, in my little community?
Yeah.
And just holding myself to that of like, I think, we're so used to seeing all the things on the news and it's like, oh, I should do this and oh, I should do this and oh, I should do this. And in that mentality, we're not really doing anything.
The decision fatigue of it all, it's
Mhm.
really overwhelming. So then, yeah, how informed do you stay, and how much does it just like drain you of all your energy? And that's a tough one for sure.
Well, and also protecting yourself in that space too, right? Of like making a choice of like, this is not, I don't need to have this information. Like,
Yeah.
it's not going to help me and it's not going to help other people. So I'm going to create a boundary so that I'm not seeing it 24/7.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm definitely. I mean, for me personally, I'm learning a lot more from history at this point than necessarily the modern news, and I think that's helping me confront a lot more of my, racial privilege and the history of this country, and I think that's been helpful versus just watching every news cycle about everything, which is so easily overwhelming. But I love that the quality of your circle, and I think that's something that really comforts me when I'm having a day where I'm just like, what am I doing? Am I even spending my time right? Have I spent the last 10 years right? Whatever. There's all this pressure. And it's just like, well, I know I have amazing people in my life right now, and that just helps me. I feel like I can feel better about myself through the people that I'm able to keep in that circle, and the people that want to be around me, and the people that reach out to me when I'm having a hard time. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm so grateful, and a lot of wonderful people you brought into my life, even just you specifically. I'm very grateful for. But I love that as a focus, and you're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, right? Like, that kind of idea. But also to really take value in our influence. We do have a platform here, and I hope that it does become a bigger platform. And I was even just kind of debating this with a friend, like right before we started, about like, yeah, I'll watch that podcast episode, but this host has had some really terrible people on and given them a big platform to say some really terrible stuff. And I don't, and it's like, well, you don't agree with all that they say. I'm like, I know, but that's still, there's responsibility to the platform and what they're putting out there and what they're amplifying. So I had a very different like belief around the responsibility of the host. And I think we've had some really wonderful quality people on our podcast, and hopefully we'll continue to do so. And I hope that we have more influence, because I've had people reach out and be like, "Oh, I want to send this to one of my students. I think it'll really comfort them to see trans people and hear their stories." We cover a lot of real, difficult but real stuff. And I think there's so much value in what we do, which is why I feel no rush to like just keep producing content or post something every day. So I hope that we continue to have more influence and really hold that with honor and really keep that to a high quality. But I think it's just an extension of that idea of really keeping a high quality circle. So some
Mhm.
good things to hope for that we can also very much control.
Yeah. Well, and we have a really unique podcast and also audience, right? How
Hmm.
often do you get two trans men who deconstructed their faith that are just literally sitting here, basically having coffee and having a conversation around
Hmm.
real world experiences and what does it look like
Hmm.
to be trans men in this world and
Yeah.
deconstruct our faith in this world and lose everything and restart. And I think there's a lot of people that can relate to the content that we're sharing as well.
Yeah, and it covers so many other things too in terms of the somatic embodiment, and how you have brought up people that are so liberated and connected to their bodies and helping other people be freed, and is such a powerful thing and so antithetical to, again, the purity culture side of it. And I also feel like I've helped to bring on a lot of wonderful creatives, who people who are taking and alchemizing their pain into comedy and into poetry and all these beautiful things. And I think that's an incredible thing too, because it's like they say the opposite of depression is expression. And then the other things too I'm learning about CPTSD, it's like the way to heal from some of that is to be out in the world and show yourself and be vulnerable, and to remind yourself like, I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm allowed to be here, I don't have to continue to hide myself. And so it's just a lot of really powerful stuff, and I'm really proud of what we've done here.
Give ourselves a pat on the back.
Yeah.
I think when I deconstructed my faith, it felt like a cavernous hole. I've said that multiple times. Like this was like one of the darkest periods of my life, and I couldn't see a way out. And I got really narrow focused at the beginning of my journey, and it was really dark and lonely and painful. Um, and now I literally had a call with my therapist yesterday, and I was like, my life is on the other side.
Mm,
Like there is like yes, you have to go through those pain points. There's going to be growth in that, and also like that's not the end of the journey. And so I
yeah.
wish I would have like acknowledged that sooner in my journey of like this is just a season of not knowing who I am, not knowing what is true, not understanding where I'm going in life, and also like 3 4 years from my original breaking point, it's like there is something more, and
Hmm.
I've created a life for myself. And so anybody who's going through this right now where it's like I've lost my community, I've lost my family, I don't know if I belong, like those are all really important questions to ask. Find someone to hold that space for you so you can process it and let it move through your body, and also know that like 6 months, 4 years, 10 years from now, you're going to be in a different space in life, and you'll be able to look back at it and be like, okay, that was a part of my journey that I just had to go through. It's a part of my existence here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something a mantra I've had in my brain as someone who's had to go through like withdrawal from alcohol many times and how painful that is physically and mentally, is just this idea of like gut up and get distance, which is a little harsh, but it's an important reminder for me of like, you just have to push through this part. This part's really, really hard, but you're gonna feel better in 24 hours. You're gonna feel better in 36 hours. Like some of those early moments really matter at that time. And so with sobriety, but it's like, if you can get that distance, you'll have more clarity. Don't try to decide everything right now and fix everything right now, which is what I normally try to do. But you get that distance, you have more space, more clarity, and you're going to be in a totally different space. And it is really hard. And so, yeah, if you can surround yourself with good, like people that can help you, that's a beautiful thing. And then the other thing that I think I struggle with is just like trust your gut. Like we've been taught to ignore our gut for our whole lives. Like, again, die to yourself. Like, I don't trust my gut. I trust Jesus. I read the Bible. We see these videos of these poor young women talking about this stuff. And it's like, oh, I remember what that's like. But you're really just like being trained to ignore all of your instincts. And that's really bad. And so I think the more you could try to, the other thing I'm trying to remind myself of too is like, sometimes I need to like take a sick day, even if I'm not actually sick. And maybe I don't even take off the work, but to treat it like a sick day of like, I'm not going to get out of bed. I'm gonna have some snacks. I'm gonna put on a comfort movie. Like I find it so hard to do things like that because I always feel like I need to be doing something else. But to be like, I need a rest. I work really hard and I get a lot of things done and I check all these boxes. But to that self kindness, I have to almost kind of frame it in that way of like, this is like a sick day. We're not going to do, we're going to go run a million errands. We're not going to respond to 1,000 emails. Like, we're just going to, and so hopefully, you know, in a couple months, I can have a much more positive way to describe these things that I just did. But the idea is being like, we do go through really difficult times, and that doesn't mean it's the wrong path. You know, I think there'd be so much pressure, especially when you go no contact with people. It's like, this feels awful, so it must be wrong. And that doesn't mean that that's true. It just feels awful. And like I said, like my deconstruction from religion was this kind of more gradual thing that was sort of guided by friends and separation and distance. My collapse of my family structure was a much more painful betrayal that felt like hard to not feel like I'm making all the wrong decisions, but to still know in my gut and in my body and in my safety and all these other things, um, that it is the right decision is really, really painful, of course, but you get distance and you're like, oh my gosh, if I hadn't, I never would have been able to. If I was living at home, I never would have been able to come out. And that's where I could feel envy about these like 18-year-olds that are getting on testosterone because both of us transitioned later in life. But like, I could not have safely done that at home. My interior knowledge knew that I was not safe to come out when I was at home. It only started to happen as I had literally 3,000 miles of distance. And so to be living this happy life that I have now with my incredible fiance and getting to be who I really am at work and all these different things was only possible because of the separation from the people I would have thought would have always been my foundation and always my framework and always, you know, the system that this rubric that I lined up with. So, um, yeah, in a way you can kind of lose everything and still have this inner knowing on the other side of it that this was the right decision. And that I can just kind of play it through in my mind of like, I never want to go back home. I never want to be in that home again. Even though I have like fond memories, the idea of knowing how unsafe I was, how much I couldn't be myself, how repressed I was, all these different things is just this realization of like, sometimes I'll think like, oh, I wish I had the money I used to have. And it's like, oh, wait, but no, if I had to go back even that many years, I'd have to be in contact with these people and that would be awful. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so like, I, can miss that part of it. But to know ultimately with that getting distance, to toughen up, get some distance, to realize that this was absolutely the right decision. But yeah, this is where, we're facing a lot of discomfort that a lot of people can spend their lives avoiding, and they just stay in kind of this repressed box that they never get out of because of the program. And like you said, so that is not easy, man. None of this is easy, but it can absolutely be worth it because what you find on the other side, it's like everything. I found me on the other side, and I will continue to find hopefully a truer, realer, freer version of me as I continue to take better care of myself and love myself and let that person out that's been hiding for so long. And it's going to be a beautiful, wonderful thing that I'm grateful to be a part of. And actually want to be alive now and actually want to live through all these challenges is says a lot, I think. Versus like, oh, I wish I could just go back to nope, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. So everything's on the other side.
Yeah, it's super interesting because there's a piece of me that longs to have connection with my family. Like if I'm most honest, I would love to be able to sit down for Thanksgiving and have a meal and feel truly loved as me, who I am, right? And also, I recognize that if and when I did go home, it was awkward as fuck. And they love me, and also they don't know how to love me like as Ace.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm contemplating going home for a weekend in August. Um, a lot of my family doesn't even know that I transitioned, like
Um,
close family, that we just stopped communicating with each other and they just don't know. And there's a piece of me that's like, I wish they could meet me in this space
yeah.
and see you too in your life and how exciting it is and how we've really grown to love ourselves and how we're
Yeah.
on this other side. And it's not bad, wrong, broken, or sinful. This is Ace. This is
Hmm.
Mark. Like, can you just love the person in front of you?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. There's a longing there that I have. And I don't know if my family has the capacity to ever meet me in that space. I have a desire for it.
Yeah.
And I think you do too, right? If your family was capable of recognizing and seeing who you are, like absolutely. And
Yeah.
also
Some of
like,
them, not others, but yeah,
yeah,
some
but
for
we
sure.
have to protect ourselves and we have to have these
Yeah.
boundaries set in place simply because like we're humans and they can't see us for our humanity and who we are.
Yeah.
Love us for that.
Yeah, and it ties into this, like, sort of funny thing where, like, we can kind of make the transition, like, our whole personality, and that's very understandable because it's this very exciting time, but then we also get to a certain point where we're like, "Yeah, but, like, my whole personality isn't that I'm trans." Like, I'm still the same person that likes these things and these hobbies and activities, like, it doesn't really affect my day-to-day life anymore, and and I still have some big thresholds I'm excited to get to with my transition. But uh, yeah, it just can feel like I just remember like the last time I saw my dad, he was like asking all these kind of invasive questions. And it was like, if someone else was asking me if I wanted to grow a beard, I'd be like, yeah. But the way he's asking it makes it feel objectifying and it makes it feel like I'm reduced down to how much I show a certain gender or not, or like, what if you can't undo it with your voice drop? Like, it just felt so icky in that context versus when you're talking to other people, will be like, oh yeah, I'm really excited. I'm starting to, getting a little bit of like whatever it is. So yeah, you have to kind of know where you're being received or where you're safe. And of course, and I'm not saying that people can't ask questions or anything like that, but
Mhm.
it's just, it's not everything ultimately. We're still people with a whole lot of other things going on in our lives.
Well, the interesting thing is like, I said this to my therapist once. I was like, had I lost 150 pounds, my family would have been ecstatic about my
Hmm.
body, about my life change, about how healthy and good it was for me. But
Yep.
because I chose to change my gender, how I appear in this world, it's no longer acceptable. And it's like, I wish there was an ability just to embrace who I am and just to be
Yeah.
seen for that versus, you know, the story that they have in their head of this is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And that ties to so many things that are, toxic about our culture in terms of body image for women. And especially growing up and, for those of us that lived through the 2000s and the, late 90s and things like that, it's really hard. And I have direct evidence to what you just said. Like I was starting to, I'd cut my hair. I was starting to dress more masculinely. I was really happy about it. And then I'd done all this therapy. I'd worked through some of my traumas. And then I started to lose a lot of weight. And that's when other parts of my family just started to coming forward and be like, oh, you're looking great. Look, you're doing so well. Like, oh, you're going to the gym all this time. And that's where I made the mistake of being extra honest and being like, oh, actually, last week was really hard for me. I had a relapse. I was really struggling. I couldn't get out of bed. And it was like, and then they would later weaponize all of that against me when they wanted something easier to point at. But it was just, they loved that I was losing weight. Oh, they loved it so much. I was getting so, and so I started like literally growing out my hair as I was getting their approval. I was like detransitioning as I was getting all of this applause for losing the weight. And so it was just interesting, but it was that pull of like these family members that I'd already been separated from through the pandemic because of all things Trump and MAGA and QAnon. It was like so intoxicating to feel like welcomed back into their light, the warmth of their proximity. And it was literally like I was basically detransitioning during that time. So that's where I love. I'm actually back to the weight I was at my highest, but I feel like I look totally different. I still love the look of my face. I'm so happy. Like I do want to keep losing weight. I want to eat healthier and all that good stuff. But it's kind of funny to be back at like the top of the scale, so to speak, and be like, yeah, but this is my face now. Like I love this face. I'm totally fine with it. Yeah, I'll lose a little, and that's just kind of a fun thing about the what tea does to you too. So I'm grateful for that. But it's I could totally say exactly what you were just saying. Like, yeah, they loved when I was losing weight. Everything else, oof. It's like when I started actually being happy at my transition, they tried to pick at every other little thing that they could to try to tear me down and say I was doing something wrong or having bad influences and I should move back home and all this stuff. And it was like, something tells me this isn't about this. This is like, it's actually the only real difference is that I'm like out and proud now. So they didn't really want to explicitly say that they hated that, but it was pretty clear what it was actually about. But yeah, I could totally relate to that. Like once I was losing the weight, oof, I was in their good graces.
It's so interesting just to see like the societal norms and what's okay, what's not, what, you know.
Mhm. It's a lot of interconnected pieces. Which so hopefully people can again relate to what we talk about because we are talking about all sorts of different, like, body image and what it's like to grow up in the world as a woman and under all those pressures, and then also everything we've experienced since transition. So I think we'll never run out of things to talk about, basically.
Very, very true.
Thank you so much for your time today, Ace. I love that you brought this topic to us. Such a good one, and probably a good one to revisit like once a year too, and just see where we're at and how we're processing it. So thank you so much for being here. We've got a great guest coming up in a couple of weeks, real guests, I should say, and I'm really excited about that. But have a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch with everyone on the next episode of Wholly Unapologetic.